Whoa, 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 whoa. Nearly every day. Nearly every hour.
Yeah, that's, you have it in a good place right now.
Now I like that. See, now we can hear that. Now if we can put the instruments in there. He's doing this all live. This is all live. See? I can do diddle-doo, you know that. And this is just a roughie that I took out of the studio the night of.
So we just about did it.
You know, I mean, in the middle, you know, and I was thinking if there was a way that we could take that out of there and then bring it down back to 250 again or something. Is that the one? Let's put in something. Because this was recorded actually in 87. I kind of like this though. I mean, that to me sounds like, you know, like real. ETIQUETTE Records has a name, and we had some good artists. We had Rockin' Robin. He and Rich D'Angelo rearranged the first version, rock version of Louie Louie, which was on ETIQUETTE Records, which inspired other groups like Paul Revere and the Kingsmen. From the 60s on, when rock and roll came in, the Northwest started creating, and we were part of that creation. We released a lot of albums and a lot of singles during the 60s. First time I met Jerry, it was a lady called me who was a fan of the Wailers. She knew that we were looking for artists, Northwest artists, for our label, ETIQUETTE Records. She said, would you visit some friends of hers who were also a band, young band, and we had so many people, you know, that were sending us tapes and doing all that, you know, just hard getting through that. And I said, well, okay, I'll go out and listen to him. So I went out to Bob Bennett, the drummer's garage, and they were rehearsing. And I, you know, listened to them, and they played some real nice cover songs. I mean, real good, nice style, I mean, good playing. Are all great musicians. Larry Prepa, Andy Prepa, Rob Lynn, Bob Bennett on drums, Rob Lynn on sax, and he did a few vocals too. And then, of course, there was Jerry Rosalie. Now, they sang, I mean, when he was singing the cover songs that I was hearing, I thought, this guy's got a great voice. But I said, do you have any original? Well, they had this one idea, this one song that it was a dance song, you know, like during the 60s and sometimes in the early 60s, there was different songs about dances, you know, like the twist, you know, something similar to that, and the Boston or the, you know, the New Jersey stomp or something, you know, whatever. And they had this great music. It was the music that eventually was retitled The Witch. And they didn't have that. I said, Jerry, rather than, you know, lock it in a time frame of a dance song, you know, would you change the lyrics, you know, and let me come and hear it again. So about a week later, they called me and said, come on out, we got this version of this song that we'd like to play. And I went out there and they played The Witch, and I just went absolutely nuts. I said, this is a killer. We got to go in. Well, anyway, we signed him to the label. I believe that was a hit. It only had to be heard. So we went to the radio station. Our favorite up here was KJR at the time, and we took it in and we said, Pat O'Day was there. He was a program director in that, and I said, you know, this is a killer band. This is a killer song. Would you play it? This is when you could go into radio stations with your product, you know, and say, hey, what do you think? Anyway. He heard it and he went, man, I don't know if we can play this on our station. And I went, well, what do you need? I said, this is a local band. I said, they're great, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he says, well, why don't you go out and see if other stations will play it and bring me back some charts. And if you do, we'll play it. And so it took us a long time because we were also promoting, you know, Wailers and some of the other artists we had. So we visited a lot of stations all over the Northwest. So we took the Witch in, and this one station, I think it was called KTW or something like that. It was one of the stations in Seattle started to play it, got on their chart. Another station, I think Yakima, Wenatchee, you know, other little towns had their own little stations. This is when all the towns had their little stations, and you could actually walk in, meet the DJs, and bring your records in. So, you know, a few stations started to play it, and then it started to grab on, and we got a few charts. So it took us about 6 months. Gave him the Pat, and I said, Pat, here's the charts. Play the record. Anyway, he said, well, I'll go out and see him. So he went out to see him, and he came back, and he was gassed too, because I was blown away. I thought the Sonics were a great band. Anyway, he was blown away, so he put the record on. In 2 weeks, it went up to number 2 on his chart, which was very difficult because that station, KJR, was one of the hottest stations around in the whole country. So when it went up to number 2, I go, hey, Pat, how come it didn't make number 1? He says, hey, we got to keep, you know, we can't put a local record as number 1 because of our status in the world of radio, you know. And I went, well, okay, you know, but number 2 was good. So the band, just took off, and we recorded 2 albums on the Sonics. They continued to just be real dynamic and real hard driving band, and we recorded that way. Jerry came through with Pearls. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark was one, Boss Hoss another one, Cinderella, and so we had several songs that you know, became international songs that people were inspired by. So the Sonics, whether they know it or not now, is that the inspiration that they provided to a lot of bands in all those genres that I named, in the punk bands, in the new wave bands, in the heavy metal bands, in the grunge bands even. And a lot of people, have referenced the Sonics as being inspirations to them, and I'm all the way from Nirvana to the White Stripes, current bands today, the Strokes, the Hives, but all the way through the history of the Sonics from the 60s until 2006 today. They're still revered all over the world. So I'm real proud of that. And I'm glad I stuck with it, to keep promoting them and pushing them, and hopefully that at some point they'll go out and perform again, And they're very capable of doing it because they're all great musicians. And Jerry still can belt it out. And I just thought the public should hear these 3 songs that we did with Jerry. They just had that quality and that energy that basically in the 60s it was before its time.